Ever heard that phrase, Bitcoin was hijacked? Sounds a little dramatic, right?
Yeah, a bit over the top, maybe.
Oh, that's what we're diving into today.
Buckle up.
We've got this book, Hijacking Bitcoin by Roger Ver.
A very interesting character in the Bitcoin world.
And we're going to try to untangle this whole saga.
Yeah, and it gets pretty complicated, but we're going to try to make sense of it all for you.
So you've probably heard of Bitcoin, but this deep dive is about understanding a crucial turning point in Bitcoin history.
A real turning point.
The block size debate.
And this debate led to some, pretty dramatic consequences.
Yeah, I mean, we're not just talking about some techie theoretical disagreement.
Right.
This gets to the heart of what Bitcoin is.
Its whole philosophy.
Its core philosophy and how it could change the world or not.
Exactly.
So imagine Bitcoin is this network, right?
Okay.
To keep things secure and decentralized, transactions are grouped into these blocks, right? And those blocks get added to a chain.
The blockchain.
The blockchain. Block size is literally how much data each block can hold.
It's a real capacity issue, right?
Okay, so how can we visualize this?
You can think about it like cargo containers on a ship.
Okay.
A bigger container, it can carry more goods.
Right.
But you need a bigger ship and you use more fuel.
Okay, yeah, that's a good analogy.
That makes sense.
So where does this guy Roger Ver fit into all this?
So Ver was one of the earliest, most vocal advocates for Bitcoin.
Really?
And he believed very passionately that it could become a global payment system.
Okay.
Like used for everyday transactions, just like right?
So he wanted Bitcoin to be fast, cheap, easy to use.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Totally.
So Ver believed that the key to achieving that was increasing the block size.
The bigger the blocks, the more transactions you can process at once.
Okay.
Leads to faster transaction speeds, lower fees. Everybody's happy.
Sounds pretty good on the surface.
Right.
But there was a strong pushback against this.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Why?
This is where we get into decentralization. This is the big concern.
Right, because one of the core strengths of Bitcoin is that it's not controlled by any single entity.
Right. It's not like a government or a bank.
Right. It's maintained by a distributed network of computers all over the world.
These are called nodes.
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 So it's kind of like the internet where no one person or company is in charge.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's crucial for security and censorship resistance.
Absolutely.
But increasing the block size too much could threaten this decentralization.
That was the concern.
So how so?
Well, bigger blocks require more computing power,
Okay.
more storage space to process and verify.
Yeah.
And if blocks get too large, only big companies with tons of resources could afford to run these nodes.
Ah, so it becomes like a club with a very high entry fee.
Exactly.
It doesn't sound very decentralized.
Not very decentralized at all.
So the concern was that increasing the block size would lead to a concentration of power,
In the hands of a few large players.
making Bitcoin more vulnerable to manipulation and control. So it's kind of like a trade-off.
A real trade-off.
Faster transactions and lower fees, potentially at the cost of decentralization.
That's it. That's the dilemma.
That's a tough dilemma.
A very tough dilemma. And it sparked a heated debate.
Yeah.
A very, very heated debate within the Bitcoin community.
Right, because you had Roger Ver and other big blockers who argued that increasing the block size was essential for Bitcoin to succeed.
Absolutely. They thought this was the only way
The only way.
to make it a global payment system.
And on the other side, the small blockers were worried about the long-term consequences for decentralization and security.
Yeah. They were thinking
Longer-term thinking.
Exactly.
So where did this debate lead?
Well, it eventually led to a split.
A split.
A fork in the blockchain.
A fork.
This resulted in the creation of Bitcoin Cash.
Bitcoin Cash.
Bitcoin Cash. But to understand how we got there, we need to delve into the tactics
Okay.
and the strategies employed by both sides, particularly Roger Ver.
Okay, so this is where the hijacking part of the story comes in.
This is where it gets juicy.
Let's unpack that next.
Yeah, let's get into it. So Ver, he was really, really passionate about his vision for Bitcoin.
Okay.
He truly believed that bigger blocks were the only way.
The only way.
Only way to make it a truly global payment system.
Okay.
And he was not afraid to use his influence to push for that vision.
Yeah, and he had a lot of influence, right?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't he control Bitcoin.com?
He did, yeah.
That's a major website in the crypto world.
Huge platform. And he used that platform to promote Bitcoin Cash.
Okay.
Even going so far as to rename it Bitcoin on the website.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So people going to Bitcoin.com,
Yeah.
they might have thought they were buying the original Bitcoin
Right.
when they were actually buying Bitcoin Cash.
It was confusing, especially for, people new to the space,
Right.
newcomers, and some people argue it was intentional,
Really?
a way to kind of siphon users and value away from the original Bitcoin.
Wow. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
that's a pretty aggressive tactic.
It was controversial.
Wasn't there also something about spam attacks on the Bitcoin network?
Yeah, there were these spam attacks that were attributed to supporters of Bitcoin Cash,
Right.
though it's hard to definitively prove who is behind it.
Right.
But essentially, they flooded the network,
The Bitcoin network.
the Bitcoin network,
Yeah.
with a huge number of small transactions.
Okay.
And this clogged it up and made it slow
So they
and
were
expensive to use.
they were intentionally creating a traffic jam to make their preferred route look better.
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
It's a little underhanded, wouldn't you say?
Many in the Bitcoin community saw it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, they thought it was an attempt to sabotage the original Bitcoin.
And make Bitcoin Cash look more appealing.
Exactly.
But ultimately, these tactics backfired, right?
Yeah, they did.
Bitcoin Cash never really took off the way Ver predicted.
It didn't, no.
Why was that?
Well, there are a few reasons. First, those technical concerns about the larger blocks,
Okay.
they proved to be valid. Bitcoin Cash did experience some centralization issues,
Okay.
with a few large mining pools gaining a lot of control over the network.
So the small blockers were right to be worried about that trade-off
Seems like it.
between speed and decentralization.
Yeah, you can't have it all, right?
Right.
And second, a lot of people in the Bitcoin community,
Okay.
they saw Ver's tactics as divisive and harmful.
Okay.
They didn't like this idea of a hostile takeover of Bitcoin,
Right.
and they rallied behind the original chain, which continued to be developed.
So it was a combo of technical challenges and community pushback
Exactly.
that led to Bitcoin Cash's relative lack of success.
Yeah, it just never really gained the same kind of widespread adoption.
Interesting. So it sounds like this whole episode,
Yeah.
it was a real test of Bitcoin's resilience.
It was a real test.
Despite the drama and the fork, the original Bitcoin, it survived
It did, yeah.
and continued to grow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is, and it's a testament to the strength of its decentralized nature.
Yeah.
No single person, not even someone as influential as Roger Ver, could control its fate.
But the debate about scaling Bitcoin, it didn't end there.
Oh, no, it didn't end there.
What were some of the other solutions that emerged?
Well, remember, the small blockers, they argued there were smarter, more sustainable ways to scale Bitcoin
Okay.
without sacrificing decentralization, right?
Right.
And one of the most promising solutions was the Lightning Network.
We touched on that briefly earlier.
We did, yeah.
Can you remind us how the Lightning Network works?
Sure, so imagine it as a separate layer built on top of the main Bitcoin blockchain.
Okay.
Allows for near-instant, really cheap transactions.
Wow.
Without having to record every single one on the main blockchain.
So it's like having a side road for smaller, more frequent transactions,
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
keeping the main highway clear for those bigger ones.
Exactly. So the Lightning Network can handle millions of transactions per second,
Right.
making it suitable for micropayments and, everyday use.
So did the development of the Lightning Network kind of prove that Ver's approach wasn't the only way to scale Bitcoin?
Well, it certainly provided an alternative, right?
Right.
One that prioritized decentralization and security.
And it's gained traction.
It has, yeah. It's gained a lot of traction and adoption.
Yeah.
More and more wallets and exchanges are integrating it.
It sounds like it could be a game changer for Bitcoin.
It could be, yeah. It's definitely a technology to watch.
But Roger Ver, he had some other issues too, right?
He did.
I vaguely remember something about legal troubles.
Yeah, he's been involved in a few controversies over the years.
Like what?
Accusations of tax evasion, selling on unregistered securities, that kind of thing.
So his story is not just about the block size debate.
No.
It's also a reminder that the crypto world
Yeah.
can be a bit of a Wild West.
It's a bit of a Wild West for sure.
with its own set of risks and challenges.
Absolutely.
And it highlights the importance of due diligence and critical thinking,
Yeah, you got to do your research.
especially when you're dealing with these influential figures and new technologies.
Don't trust, verify, right.
Right. You need to look beyond the hype and understand the underlying facts.
And the potential risks.
Speaking of influential figures,
Oh, yeah?
there's another high-profile individual who jumped into the block size debate a few years later,
Who was that?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Oh, yeah, he's got to have an opinion on everything.
Right. He always has something to say about everything.
What was his take?
Well, he surprised a lot of people
Really?
by advocating for larger blocks,
Oh, wow.
echoing some of Roger Ver's arguments about the need for Bitcoin to handle more transactions.
So he was basically siding with the big blockers, even though that debate had already played out years earlier.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's interesting.
It sparked a lot of discussion.
I bet.
But ultimately, Musk's influence on Bitcoin's development, it's been pretty limited.
It has, yeah.
The community,
Including the core developers.
they've generally stuck to their commitment to decentralization and security.
Even if it means slower transaction speeds in the short term.
So it seems like the lesson here is that Bitcoin is designed to be resistant to control
Yeah.
by any single entity.
Even someone as powerful as Elon Musk.
Wow.
The Bitcoin community is very decentralized.
Yeah.
They have a strong culture of independent thinking.
Okay.
They're not easily swayed by the opinions of individuals, no matter how wealthy or famous they might be.
That's pretty remarkable.
It is.
It's like a real-world example of a system that's designed to be resistant to manipulation and control.
Yeah, it's a really interesting case study in decentralized governance.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From Roger Ver's vision for Bitcoin to the block size debate, the creation of Bitcoin Cash,
Yeah.
the emergence of the Lightning Network,
Don't forget Elon Musk.
Elon Musk chiming in.
I have his 2 cents.
What does all this mean for us today?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah, what are the key takeaways?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that Bitcoin is constantly evolving. It's not static. It's not set in stone.
Right.
It's constantly being developed, debated, and improved upon.
By a global community.
By a global community, exactly.
So even though this whole block size debate happened a while ago,
Yeah.
it's still relevant
It's very relevant.
because it shows us how Bitcoin adapts in response to these challenges.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that there will always be disagreements and different visions for the future of Bitcoin. But ultimately, it's the community, through consensus and collaboration, that determines its path forward.
That's pretty empowering, isn't it?
It is empowering, yeah.
It means that Bitcoin isn't controlled by any single entity,
Right.
but rather by the collective will of the people who use and support it.
That's the beauty of decentralization.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
what are some things that our listeners should keep in mind as they continue to explore the world of Bitcoin?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed and to think critically. Don't just blindly follow the hype or the opinions of these influential figures.
Right.
Do your own research, understand the different perspectives,
Yeah.
form your own conclusions.
Good advice.
You know, Bitcoin is more than just an investment or a technology.
Yeah.
It's a social and economic experiment.
Okay.
It's a movement that's challenging traditional notions of money and finance.
And like any experiment, it's bound to have its ups and downs.
Absolutely. Its successes and failures.
But it's the journey itself, the process of learning and discovery that makes it so fascinating.
That's what keeps it interesting.
Okay, so stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Good advice.
The world of Bitcoin is full of surprises, and who knows what the future holds.
Nobody knows. That's the exciting part.
Maybe we'll all be using it for everyday transactions someday.
Maybe.
Or maybe it'll become something else entirely.
Only time will tell.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
We're all part of this grand experiment, writing the next chapter in the history of money.
And that's what makes it so exciting to follow along.
It's kind of amazing to think this whole thing.
This whole saga.
Yeah, this whole saga started with just one person's idea, Satoshi Nakamoto.
The mysterious creator of Bitcoin.
And we still don't even know who they are.
It's true.
But their invention, it sparked a global revolution.
Really is a testament to the power of ideas.
Yeah, and the fact that they chose to stay anonymous, it adds a whole other
layer to it.
layer to the story.
It really does.
It's like they created this system,
This incredible system and
just step back
and let it do its thing.
to let it evolve on its own without any central control.
And that's a key part of Bitcoin's appeal, I think, for a lot of people.
Decentralization.
Decentralization, yeah.
It's not controlled by any government or corporation
Or individual.
or individual.
It's just governed by math and code.
That's it, the rules.
The rules that everyone agrees on.
So even though there have been disagreements
Oh, yeah.
and forks, like with Bitcoin Cash,
Yeah, the underlying system is remarkably resilient.
it's bounced back every time.
Every time.
You know, it's interesting to
Yeah.
compare Satoshi's approach to Roger Ver's.
Very different approaches.
Satoshi was all about consensus, collaboration,
Yeah.
whereas Ver's was more about pushing his own vision.
Even if it meant creating division.
Yeah.
Strong personality.
So it raises the question, like, what is the best way to govern?
That is the question.
A decentralized system like Bitcoin?
Is it through consensus and compromise?
Or is it through strong leadership?
And bold action.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an easy answer.
I don't think so either.
I think the Bitcoin experience shows us both approaches have their strengths and weaknesses.
Definite. I mean, consensus, it can be slow,
Yeah,
messy,
but it also ensures changes are made carefully,
with broad support.
broad support.
And then strong leadership, it can drive innovation,
Right.
but it also risks creating those factions and those conflicts.
Right. So it's about finding the right balance.
Yeah, it's all about balance.
Maybe that balance even evolves over time
Oh, definitely.
as the tech and the community mature.
I think that's what we're seeing.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the world of Bitcoin,
Okay, deep dive coming to a close.
what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from this conversation?
I'd say the most important thing is to remember that Bitcoin is more than just a technology or an investment. It's an idea.
An idea.
It's a movement.
It's a movement, wow.
A social and economic experiment that's challenging the status quo.
Right, like how we think about money.
Exactly.
And it's an experiment that's still in its early stages.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started.
We don't know what the future holds,
Nobody knows.
but we can be sure that it will continue to surprise us, challenge us.
Inspire us.
So to our listeners out there,
Yeah, to the listeners.
we encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, keep asking those questions.
The world of Bitcoin is vast and complex, full of opportunity.
It's full of opportunity, for sure.
And remember, the most valuable asset in this space isn't Bitcoin itself.
Dope.
It's your own critical thinking skills.
We got to use them.
Use them wisely, and you'll be well equipped to navigate this exciting and ever-evolving world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.